Now, what you're about to see is Salvador Dali and Luis Buñuel's Andalou. It was considered the first Surrealist film. Now, we will not be watching this entire film together in the reel. You can see the full thing on YouTube by writing in the title of this short film. It's only 17 minutes long, and as I've told you with other films we've been watching of the avant-garde, I really do want you to go back and look at these films for yourself without my whole dialogue over the top of the film. So, the translation of Andalou is the Andalusian dog. I can tell you right now, there's no dog in this movie. In fact, the whole idea that Dali and Buñuel had, as far as a rule goes to making this film, is they were not allowed to use any images that were rational. So they were looking for the irrational. And they totally play around with time. This means once upon a time. And it opens up with Luis Buñuel sharpening a razor, a shaving razor, which a guy would use for his face. He tests out its sharpness. And something calls him to go out onto his balcony. And we see what he's seeing. Right now the camera is omniscient watching him, but it switches and we see him looking at the moon and this cloud going across the moon as he's smoking. This is Simone, by the way, the actress. And that razor slices across the eye like the clouds going across the moon. And now we're 8 years earlier or later. I can't remember which one it was. I didn't see the French fast enough because I was talking. But the eye has been cut. And I think you have to think about the eye on two levels. Even though this is in French and the word for eye is je, still seeing that eye cut makes me think about the English eye and the identity, the self, the ego being cut. What we have here is Pierre, and totally a dude, but he's dressed as a chambermaid. What is up with that? And he's riding a bike, and we have this great surrealist image where two things are over the top of the other, which you often feel in dreams. So again, we're in a dream kind of sequence. Luis Buñuel and Salvador Dali, Luis Buñuel, discussed how these were two dreams coming together, two separate dreams of Salvador Dali and himself. And isn't it strange how Simone already feels that he's going to fall? And she feels something is wrong when she goes to that window. Now, is she disturbed that this guy is dressed like a chambermaid? And that he's playing with gender normatives? And what is this box on his chest? Is he truly hurt? Before she was shocked or upset, and now she's loving, nurturing. And we look inside the box, and what you're seeing is it's a collar. Back in the day, when you bought a shirt, the collar and the cuffs were separate. Shirts were expensive, and collars and cuffs tend to get dirty faster, so shirts were sold with separate cuffs and collars. You didn't have to replace the whole shirt. Very smart, very eco-friendly. Why haven't we stayed with that idea? Anyway, going on. So she seems like a really great, I'm thinking, a wife here. She's got her man's clothing ready for him, but still there's those chambermaid pieces attached to it. And we see what we saw in Maya Deren, where the eyes are getting heavy, and we get the idea that she has gone to sleep. And this man is now Pierre, which is what we call him. He's the actor Pierre Bachelet. And he's seeing these ants in his hands. And what is this ants? What are these ants coming out of his hands? Well, we can think of it as death itself. And decay. And for, again, amateur filmmakers or avant-garde filmmakers, they're ahead of their time. The special effects are astounding. And the use of editing itself. So, the idea, and how does, the ants in the hand relate to the armpit and the sea urchin here? Again, we're in the world of the irrational, but I would say that we're not truly in the world of the irrational. I think the culture is playing with Dali and Buñuel's choices. And now we come to this androgynous figure who is down in the street where Pierre fell, and there's a hand on the ground. And we're thought back to the ants in the hand. So what is up with the hand? Well, Luis Buñuel and Salvador Dali come from Catholic Spain. That is a very sex-negative and repressed society. And one of the things you've got to think about is masturbation. And why the hand might be being used is because there's all these old wives' tale to frighten young boys that they shouldn't masturbate. And so if you masturbated, you would grow hair on the palms of your hands, or you could go blind, or even worse, you could die. So we know that this hand is very much a part of Dali's paintings. And through different things I've read, Dali was very much looking into sexuality and repressed sexuality and trying to change that about society. Now, something is happening here with this androgynous figure. She's in the street. The police have allowed her to stick with a hand. It's in the box. And her face is almost romantic, thinking that she got away with something or that she's in love, and she's killed. And why is she killed? Is this irrational, or is this just more homophobia? From the 1920s when this film was made, like 1926 or 27. And Salvador Dali and Luis Buñuel were great friends with the great playwright and poet Gabriel Garcia Lorca. They had like this trio friendship. And Lorca was gay, and they felt that modern art had to be straight. And so they got rid of Lorca from their friendship. Now, what's really bizarre, right, is Pierre just watched the death of this woman, and he's now going after Simone. He's gotten turned on by seeing someone die. So there's that problem that we are often talking about in society, how sex and violence are mixed. And then if you know French, right, what is the word for orgasm? Le petit mort, the small death. And the way his eyes are back in his head, the blood dripping from his mouth, he seems like a corpse. And then that image is gone as he tries to sexually take her, and she clearly doesn't want it. So now we're in the middle of what is very much a rape scene just about. So she defends herself. And this is one thing that Buñuel talked about this moment here in his collaboration with Dali as an example of how the rules went. Right? What should Pierre pick up to defend himself or to counterattack? And they came up with many ideas like a frog or a toad. And Buñuel was like, no, Dali. And then Dali said, okay, 2 ropes. And Buñuel was like, great, wonderful. What's on the end of those 2 ropes? Now, what I think is amazing at the end of these 2 ropes, those things remind me of the 10 Commandments. There's something very Moses about those 2 pieces of concrete. And we've just watched this idea of sexuality played out so far. And then these are 2 decaying donkeys on grand pianos that Salvador Dali made for this film. The film, by the way, took 2 weeks to shoot. These are Marist brothers. So very much religion is tied to this film. But we have to think also culture itself. Pianos are very much related to Western culture and art, and film is art. So this is like self-referential. And we're again back to the hand and the attacking, and notice those ants coming out of his hands again. And we've just seen this attempt at getting sex. And then time switches again. She's on the other side of the door that she's just trying to get out of, and he's in bed. So we're clearly in the dream world. About 3 in the morning. And he rings the doorbell, which shakes up an alcoholic beverage or cocktail of some kind. Don't we all wish we had a doorbell like that? Ha ha ha. So I get the feeling that she called a friend for help, is my feeling. And here he comes in to talk to him about his relationships, and then he has to grow up and be a man and get rid of this feminine chambermaid costumes that he has on. He has to pass out of whatever this phase he is in. Which is very related to Western cultural thinking. So even though Dali and Buñuel tried to go for the irrational, we can still figure things out through the signs and codes and conventions of film itself. And see, all that little feminine object he tried to maintain, his buddy knew. And again, he's treated like a child and meant to stand in the corner. It feels like a parent more than a friend talking to each other. And here is the great surprise. It turns out, 16 years before, which makes no sense, that it's Pierre, again, in a different costume, and we're using that special effects of mirrors and such, and stand-ins. And there's something about what's on the table. We're looking at, I think it's Renoir. No, it's not Renoir. It's one of the artists. I can't remember. It's a Dutch master who's well known. So Renoir is not even close to that's French. So he gives him these books, probably that he feels are more mature. But yet he's saying, no, no. And he tries to run away. Get the idea that it's hopeless. And these books turn into guns. And Pierre ends up killing the self, which brings us back to the eye slashing at the beginning of the film. And here's that mirror trick. Not as well done as Maya Daren's in Messages of the Afternoon. And we have that fall out of space and time that we see constantly in Maya Daren's work. And he touches a woman that disappears. And it's like the id has won. Because I think about Freud's psychological model, which we talked about with film audiences. Clearly, Pierre of the chambermaid Pierre is the id, where this Pierre is the superego, and he shot the superego, is a way to look at this moment. And so I'm going to leave it here. If you want to see the rest of it, which you should, you will have to go into YouTube and put in the title of the film and watch the rest of it to see how the movie ends. Hopefully I've started you off on your journey with Andalou.